Welcome, friend. I'm James, your host, and today, we're diving into another captivating episode. Grab a drink, get comfortable, and get ready for a powerful story that's sure to resonate. If something hits home, share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive in. The LA Betrayal, How I Discovered My GF's Dirty Secret. Hey everyone, I'm here to spill my guts about the time I found out my girlfriend cheated on me. It's a wild, messy ride, so buckle up. I'm a 28M and my girlfriend, 27F, and I had been together for 4 years at the time. I thought we had it all: love, passion, and a deep connection that seemed almost unbreakable. I was completely head over heels for her. She wasn't just my partner, she was my best friend, the one person I trusted more than anyone in the world. We had this easy, effortless bond, like two puzzle pieces that just fit together perfectly. We could talk for hours about anything or nothing at all. We shared inside jokes that could make us burst out laughing with just a glance, and our physical chemistry was off the charts. It felt like we were soulmates. The thing is, when you're so in love, you can get blind to the cracks that start to form. I couldn't see them, and I didn't think there were any, to be honest. We had a pretty healthy sex life, and we weren't shy about trying new things to keep the spark alive. There was passion, trust, everything you'd expect in a good relationship. Or at least, that's what I thought. But love can make you blind, and sometimes you don't notice the signs that are right in front of you. And let me tell you, I was completely blindsided when I found out the truth. It all started about 2 years ago when my girlfriend decided to take a girls' trip to Los Angeles. She had been talking about needing a break from the grind for a while, some time to relax and unwind without any responsibilities. Her friends had planned this whole week-long vacation full of beach days, rooftop bars, and hitting up some of LA's trendiest clubs. It was the kind of trip that sounded like a dream getaway, and I didn't think twice about it because, hey, I trusted her. We were in a solid place, and there wasn't a single doubt in my mind that this was just an innocent girls' trip. She needed it, and I figured it would be good for her to recharge. She kept me updated during the whole trip. I'd get texts and selfies from her every day, showing me the beautiful beach sunsets or the fancy cocktails she was sipping at some chic bar. She'd send me clips of the DJs spinning at these rooftop parties, her and her friends dancing and laughing. She was living it up, and it made me happy to see her enjoying herself. We even talked on the phone a couple of times during the trip, and she would tell me about all the fun they were having. One night, she mentioned that they had met a group of people at a club, and there was this one guy who was flirting with her. She laughed it off and made a joke about how guys just can't resist a pretty girl. I didn't think much of it because she made it seem like a harmless little encounter. "You know you're the only one for me," she said playfully. And like the trusting fool I was, I didn't give it a second thought. When she came back, I was waiting for her at the airport. I'll never forget the moment she walked out of the gate. She looked incredible, sun-kissed, hair flowing, wearing this cute little sundress that made her look like she had just stepped out of a summer catalog. I couldn't help but smile, my heart racing with excitement as she made her way toward me. I pulled her into my arms and kissed her like I hadn't seen her in months. I was so wrapped up in the moment that I didn't even notice anything was off. We drove home, and everything felt normal, better than normal, actually. We were all over each other the second we got through the door. It was like we had this magnetic pull, and we couldn't get enough. We tore at each other's clothes, and before I knew it, I was going down on her, eager to reconnect after the time apart. Little did I know that just a day earlier, she had been doing things with someone else that I never would have imagined. Fast forward about 6 months. By this point, the LA trip was a distant memory, and life had gone back to its usual rhythm. We were still that inseparable couple who did everything together. I wasn't the kind of guy to snoop or pry, I trusted her implicitly. So when she sat me down one evening with a serious look on her face and said, "We need to talk," I had no clue what was coming. I mean, maybe I thought it was something small, like a fight with one of her friends or a problem at work. But the second she started talking, I could feel my stomach tighten, my pulse quickening with a mix of dread and confusion. She told me to remember the guy she mentioned from LA, the one who had been flirting with her. My gut instinctively clenched. She said that there was more to the story than she'd let on, and that's when she dropped the bomb. The truth was, she hadn't been honest about what went down in Los Angeles. She confessed that they had exchanged numbers on the very first night of the trip, and from there, they kept in touch. It wasn't just the occasional text, they were practically glued to their phones, talking constantly. She said it was like she got swept up in this whirlwind of excitement, and before she knew it, they were making plans to meet up away from her friends. I was sitting there, trying to process what I was hearing, but it was like my mind was refusing to accept it. The girl I thought I knew would never do something like this. As she went on, she described their last day in LA. They had met up at the beach, just the two of them. She talked about how they walked along the shore, the sunset casting a golden glow over the ocean, making everything look like a scene out of a movie. She said he suggested grabbing a drink before calling it a night. But before they even got to the bar, he mentioned needing to swing by his hotel room to grab something. I didn't think anything would happen, she said, almost like she was trying to convince herself. But the way she described it, I could tell there was a part of her that knew exactly where it was headed. The second they stepped into his room, it was like all the restraint she had left evaporated. They were kissing, clawing at each other's clothes, as if the world outside didn't exist. She dropped to her knees and took him in her mouth without a second thought, letting the moment consume her completely. She didn't hold back on the details either. She told me how he pulled her onto the bed after that, how he was rougher than she was used to, how she didn't care because it made everything feel more intense. She let him finish inside her. Twice. They lay there afterward, bodies tangled together, breathing heavy. She said they cleaned up, got dressed, and actually went out for that drink as if nothing out of the ordinary had happened. She even kept texting me that night, sending me pictures of the beach and telling me how much she missed me, playing the role of the perfect girlfriend. The next morning, she boarded her flight back home, put on that sunny smile, and greeted me at the airport like she was returning from a normal vacation. She didn't miss a beat, didn't give me a single reason to suspect a thing. The night we spent together when she got back was passionate, intense, and I was oblivious to the reality that had been unfolding behind my back. The girl I thought was the love of my life had betrayed me in the most intimate way, and for 6 months, I had been living a lie. As she kept talking, I felt a mix of emotions surging inside me: anger, betrayal, disgust. But then, something even darker started to rise up. As messed up as it sounds, I felt a surge of arousal at the details she was sharing. I didn't want to, didn't even understand why I was having this reaction, but there it was. It was like this twisted cocktail of jealousy, anger, and something else I couldn't quite name. The more she talked, the more this sick feeling of excitement bubbled up inside me, as if I was getting off on the pain. I hated myself for it, but I couldn't deny it was there. She must have seen the change in my expression because her lips curled into a sly, almost knowing smile. "You're turned on, aren't you?" she asked, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and amusement. It wasn't a question, it was a statement, and we both knew it. She leaned in, her fingers grazing my thigh, then moving up slowly as she kept eye contact. "You like hearing about me being a bad girl, don't you?" she teased. And at that moment, I crumbled. I wasn't the guy I thought I was. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was just completely lost in whatever messed up feeling was taking over. We ended up having the most intense sex we'd had in a long time. It was primal, desperate, like we were trying to use each other to push away the truth that had just come to light. She kept whispering things in my ear, more details about what she did with him, and I could feel the humiliation mixing with the pleasure. It was a toxic combination, and I knew right then that whatever we had, it was no longer the same. Afterward, as we lay there in the dark, the weight of everything started to sink in. The adrenaline faded, and I was left staring up at the ceiling, feeling a crushing emptiness take over. She was curled up next to me, her breathing still heavy, but there was an awkward silence that hung in the air. It was like we both knew that something had fundamentally changed between us, something we couldn't just ignore or forget. For the first time in our relationship, I didn't know what to say to her. I didn't even know how to look at her. Eventually, she broke the silence, her voice soft and cautious, like she was trying to step over broken glass. "I'm so sorry," she said, her hand resting gently on my chest. "It didn't mean anything, it was just sex. It was stupid and reckless, and I'm ashamed." Her words hung in the air, but they didn't really sink in. It was like I was hearing them from far away, through a fog of confusion and disbelief. I didn't respond at first. I couldn't. My mind was racing. With 1,000 questions, images of her with this other guy flashing before me like a slideshow of nightmares. She must have sensed my hesitation because she continued talking, her tone becoming more insistent. "I never planned on telling you," she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "But there's more to it." I felt a chill run down my spine as she hesitated, clearly struggling to find the words. I turned my head to look at her, and the expression on her face was different now. There was fear, yes, but also a kind of desperation. It was like she was about to confess something even darker, something that would make the story so far seem like child's play. "After LA, we kept in touch," she confessed. "I know I should have cut it off, but I didn't. He'd message me every now and then, and sometimes." I replied. "I wasn't looking for anything, I swear. It was just stupid flirty texts, but it kept going for a few months." My blood ran cold as I processed this new piece of information. It wasn't just a one-time thing. She had continued to entertain this guy even after coming back home, even after pretending like everything was perfectly normal between us. "I sent him a few pictures," she added, her voice now barely a whisper. "Nothing explicit, just some selfies, but I know it was wrong." I sat up in bed, putting some distance between us as if it would help me clear my head. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface, but I didn't want to explode, not yet. "So let me get this straight," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos raging inside me. "You cheated on me with this guy, came back and pretended like nothing happened, and then continued talking to him for months? You were sending him pictures while we were together?" She didn't say anything, just nodded, her eyes welling up with tears. It was like seeing a whole new side of her, a version of the girl I loved that I didn't recognize. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to demand answers that would somehow make sense of all this. But another part, a darker part, was still stuck on that sick thrill I'd felt earlier. She reached out to touch my arm, but I pulled away, getting out of bed and pacing across the room. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear. The answer. "Why didn't you just keep lying? You obviously had no problem doing it before." She took a deep breath, wiping a tear from her cheek. "I didn't want you to find out some other way," she said, her voice trembling. "My sister, she borrowed my phone the other day, and she saw some of the old messages. She confronted me about it and told me I needed to come clean, or she would. So, it wasn't even her choice to confess. She was backed into a corner, and that's why she came clean." I felt a fresh wave of humiliation wash over me, realizing that if her sister hadn't found those messages, I would still be living in blissful ignorance. I would still be the fool who thought he had the perfect girlfriend. I wanted to scream, to break something, to do anything to release the rage that was building inside me. But instead, I found myself sitting back down on the edge of the bed, my head in my hands. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to walk out the door and never look back. But another part of me, a part that I hated, was still drawn to her. Despite everything, there was a pull I couldn't explain, a twisted desire to stay and see how this would all play out. She moved closer to me, placing a hand on my back. "I know you have every right to hate me," she said softly. "But I love you, and I never stopped loving you. I made a mistake, a horrible mistake, but I want to fix this. I want to fix us." The words sounded hollow, almost rehearsed, but there was a pleading look in her eyes that made it hard to ignore. I glanced up at her, and for a moment, I could see the girl I fell in love with. But then the images of her with that guy flooded back, and I felt a sickening jolt of reality. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. There were no words that could undo what had been done, no apologies that could erase the betrayal. And yet, despite everything, the thought of leaving her, of ending our relationship right then and there, terrified me. I was hooked, tangled up in this web of love, lust, and betrayal. It was like I was addicted to the chaos, even though I knew it was destroying me. Days went by, and we didn't talk much. It was as if we were tiptoeing around the truth, both of us afraid of what might happen if we pushed too hard. There were moments when I'd catch her looking at me, her eyes filled with guilt and sadness, and other times when she'd reach for my hand, desperate for any sign that things could go back to the way they were. But I wasn't the same person anymore. Something inside me had shifted, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, the darkness was always there, lurking just beneath the surface. One night, about a week after her confession, she brought it up again. "I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice trembling. "I know I hurt you, but I'm willing to do anything to make this work. I'm even open to letting you explore other options if that's what you need." Her offer hung in the air, and I could see how much it pained her to say it. The thought of sharing me, of letting me have the same freedom she had taken, was tearing her apart. And yet, there was still that possessive streak. She made it clear that she wasn't willing to share in the same way. "But if we do this, I need to know that you're still mine," she added. "I don't want you to fall for someone else." Her words were a mix of desperation and control, a twisted attempt to balance out the damage she had done. I could see it in her eyes. She didn't want me to stray, didn't want me to find comfort in the arms of another woman. It was like she wanted to have her cake and eat it too, and I found myself torn between anger and a strange, inexplicable longing to agree. I did what I had done before. I caved. I told her we could try to make it work, that we could see if we could rebuild the trust, but I didn't know if I actually believed it. In the back of my mind, there was this nagging thought that maybe this was just who we were now, a couple bound together by love, but fractured by betrayal, stuck in this toxic cycle where lust and lies blurred the lines of right and wrong. And so, we began this new chapter. It wasn't an open relationship, not exactly, but it was something different, something undefined. There were rules, boundaries that she had set, and I agreed to them, even though I wasn't sure why. I guess a part of me still clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, we could get back what we had lost. But another part knew that the trust was gone, and that the love we shared would never be the same. It's been almost 2 years since that night. We're still together, still trying to navigate this strange, twisted relationship that's evolved from what it once was. I've learned more secrets since then, discovered more lies that were hidden in the cracks. It wasn't just that one time in LA. There were others. Other nights, other guys. Each revelation was like reopening an old wound, cutting deeper than before. And yet, I'm still here. Maybe I'm a fool, or maybe I'm just addicted to the drama, the chaos that comes with loving someone who is capable of breaking your heart over and over again.